All right, welcome back. Well, yes, Mr. Ikeazor joins us now. He's a senior advocate of Nigeria, he's a former first vice president of the Nigerian Bar Association, and the convener, We the People. So you can tell where that comes from. Good morning. Thank you for coming on. It's been a long time.
Yes, it has been. It has been about 4 years now.
Oh, dear. Okay, good to see you again then.
Same here.
Well, we know the NBA conference is going on. We know the president did address them. We also do know the Attorney General was there. But we're not going to start from there. Let me start with something that's a bit curious to us this morning. From the OAU, you know, we just read that story that in the front page of some of the dailies, OAU bans hugging, sitting on laps, skimpy dresses, tattoos, others on campus. It looks as if there's some sort of campaign to ensure that students act right. And I know, of course, there might be laws that might have informed this. So I'm just wondering, so even if they had laws in the school that informs this decision, where does that sit in rights of people?
Yes, I'm thinking of the fifth habit in the book, The 5 Habits of Highly Successful People. The fifth habit is seek first to understand, then be understood. I'd like to understand the premises for the school taking such a decision, which completely infringes upon the rights of the children, freedom of expression. And then 2, I think the school should also seek to understand youth. When does a child wear all kinds of clothing, but when he or she is a child? No cowries in their hair, no hugging.
No dress or item that cover their faces?
Including masks.
Oh,
COVID masks or something, I don't know. But it would be helpful if the school would not be high-handed, but just explain. This is why we are doing it, because the parents will be interested, we in the society will be interested. Otherwise, I think there's a diminishment of the rights of the kids. And then our schools are becoming glorified secondary schools, universities. When I was in the campus, I had hair at the time. Obviously. And my hair was in Jericho's. My classmates, schoolmates all know that.
Who would have thought?
Because in Jericho's, I went to classes like nobody spoke to me about it. Someday I came of age. I dropped it. Before I left school too, I dropped it. I began to comb out my hair. But I had fun. I thought it was great doing that.
It's hip.
Yeah, I thought it was hip. You know, of course, to go to the law school, you can't have your hair in Jericho's anyway. But you must let kids be. So I think
do you see a situation where the Nigerian students, nuns, for instance, would act?
If they react, they'll be called irresponsible. Is that what you are reacting over? I think they are between the devil and the deep blue sea, but I think they should speak up. This is disrespectful. Already we are a bit uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable with seeing law undergraduates, for instance, wearing uniforms. In virtually all faculties of law, white shirt over dark trousers. If you're female, white blouse over dark trousers. I say, where did this come from? Why? In our time, we wore jeans and wore whatever, and then we still became what we are. And a number of us, the new Attorney General is my classmate, you know. So we all went to school, we were all boys. And then we came out of it all.
Did he have Jericho too?
No.
It'd be good to see that picture.
When I see, we're going to ask him.
I wish I can find my photos so that I can't see photos from that era anymore. Yes.
Oh, shame.
Well, they say, according to the school, any violator of the dress code will be rusticated from the school for 1 semester, while, in addition, any student found with colored hairstyles, hair braiding for males, or spangled hairstyles for males will be rusticated for 2 semesters from the school. So,
all manner of. I saw the whole list yesterday. I was saying maybe they're just trying to.
It's a revised handbook. For the school
maybe they're trying to emulate the private universities. They do this all the time. There's no one telling them they can't do it or they can do it. If they were going to be talking about the rights of the students here and saying this is an infringement on their rights, what about private universities?
Yes, I think it applies across board. With all due respect, I think they're going extremely too far. We are a secular nation. We're not a theocracy. And I think that I'm beginning to fear where we are headed. let's allow liberty within bounds.
Yeah.
There are some things.
What if they say this is creating the boundaries? I mean,
yes.
Dress responsibly and come to school. This is a boundary we're creating.
That your braided hair shouldn't be multicolored. What's the meaning of that? I don't know the relevance of that to education. I think there should be liberty, especially as these kids, you behave like the Bible says. When I was a child, I thought like a child. I spoke like a child. Then when I became an adult, I put away childish things. There's a place for childishness. There's a place for being a child. You can't force a person to grow up before his time. Otherwise, the person might become like a musician, Michael Jackson, who at 50 was still a child. And his best friends were kids of 6, 7, because he lost his childhood. That may be an extreme example, but allow kids be. Let kids be kids. And then when they grow, they grow. Then you have, in fact, that's how you even have experience. That you've had experience, you've gone through life, and then you're able to advise other people based on your own experience. I think they're trying to jumpstart these children to a level of responsibility that a 19-year-old would not ordinarily have.
All right. Is there any way we can jumpstart the Attorney General of the Federation to ensure that he upholds the laws and then does things a lot differently? Because we know in a democracy, the judiciary is a very important fulcrum, very important leg in the scheme of things. And so, yes, they've taken the oath of office. They're in the offices already. So in that conference and amongst your peers, what kind of conversation is going on now in terms of what is expected of him?
Yes. Lateef Fagbemi, SAN, not only was he the first to take silk in our class, to become SAN in our class. When we were 11 years at the bar, still trying to find our feet, he had taken the silk. That's how exceptional he is. And he took it at the age of 36 or 7. That's how exceptional he is. I don't mean to flatter him. He is a lawyer's lawyer. He is a square peg in a square hole, which cannot be said for everybody who has occupied that office. So there's a feeling of refreshment, a breath of fresh air that has just been introduced to the Ministry of Justice. And the expectations are high, but I am also a bit cynical about such expectations. Of course, an Attorney General is not the head of state. An Attorney General will only work within the space allowed him by his boss. And if his boss clips his wings, then he will not be effective.
What do you mean? So as an Attorney General or as Minister of Justice?
Well, he holds both offices. So there'll always be the political interference.
Yeah, but in his capacity as Attorney General,
yes,
would he be limited?
He ought not to be. He ought not to be. And these are the major problem with the justice sector today is that Nigerians are cynical about the judiciary, about us lawyers.
Who can blame them?
Yeah,
can we blame them?
You can't blame Nigerians. We ourselves are truthful to ourselves. This sector is failing, to put it nicely. And I, as a lawyer, I will find it difficult to take somebody to court. I will find it difficult to file a suit in my name.
Why?
To redress my own rights, given what I know about the system. Number one reason, cases take forever. It is scandalous. Justice delayed is justice denied is a trite expression, but it is true. The first duty of Mr. Attorney General is call a stakeholders meeting, declare a state of emergency in the justice sector. What can we do to make sure that the cases in the court of first instance round up in a maximum of 24 months? I got judgment this year, a case that took 12 years in the High Court. 12 years in the High Court.
12 years.
3 years ago, I got judgment in the Supreme Court in a case that began in 1994 and ended in the Supreme Court. It was in the Supreme Court for 12 years, and judgment was delivered. My client was 84 years old.
Did he keep paying all that all the while?
No, I did that case pro bono because he had been ruined. He had been ruined by the case. A commercial transaction that went awry between him and a bank. 12 years in the Supreme Court. 12 years.
In the Supreme Court?
In the Supreme Court alone. So there's so much that needs to be done. We know the solution. I'll just try to break down the solutions. First of all, with the Supreme Court, it's not, Nigeria is the only Supreme Court where everybody can come to the Supreme Court. A tenant who has the funds to hold his landlord to ransom can actually start a matter in the magistrate's court and appeal and appeal and appeal over 30 years to the Supreme Court. You know, if you have the funds to hold your landlord to ransom, you don't come to the Supreme Court for every matter. The Supreme Court, well, in the U.S., we always refer to the U.S., maybe our constitution is patterned after theirs. But in the U.S., the Supreme Court decides what matters they want to hear. You only come by way of...
Well, because states have their own Supreme Court?
Well, not just that, but why are you bringing this matter? The law is settled here. There are 5 ways of proving your title to land. Why are you bringing an appeal, creating a 6th way? So the Supreme Court, they won't even hear you in the first place.
But isn't it lawyers that take you to the Supreme Court?
It's lawyers. But then,
I can't work in there myself.
Yes. So now there needs to be a body of rules that will make it impossible to bring some kind of cases to the Supreme Court. Since we ourselves, enlightened self-interest, I've got to be paid some money is the only way I make a living. So I accept every brief, even though I know there's no hope in it. So Supreme Court, that's about the Supreme Court. But let's now go to the courts of first instance, the high courts. I'll come to the magistrates after, which are the grassroots courts. The high courts. I went to Vancouver. Please allow me to tell this story. 2010, International Bar Association had their conference in Canada, Vancouver. Vancouver is not even the capital of the state it is in. British Columbia is the province. And some of us got a bit bored with the conference, and we strolled away. Funke Adekoya SAN, Akeredolu SAN, now Governor Emeka Ngige SAN. We strolled away from the conference and strolled to the court. Lo and behold, the High Court, 60 courts in a complex. Opposite it, Magistrates Court, 60 courts. And we sat down in the court, a lady judge, 2 lawyers in the court, doing case one after the other, witnesses one after the other. And then when we were done, we went to meet the court administrator and asked, these 60 courts, are they for the province of British Columbia? No, he said, it's for Vancouver City alone. In Victoria, the capital, there's another 60 courts. So if we must resolve this matter of delay in justice, and delay in justice is one of the reasons for violence in this society. Self-help. Why will I take this matter to court when I can get thugs to deal with you? As a landlord, I can remove the roof of your house, you know, instead of going to court and you keep me there for 4 years. So society is breaking down because the justice sector is failing. So what needed to be done now is appoint too many judges. In the jurisdiction I practice, a judge has 500 cases. He can't even do 50 in a year. Appoint many more. Lagos, for instance, should not have less than, if we want to be serious, Lagos is the commercial nerve center of Nigeria, 1,000 high court judges, 1,000.
But can he pay them? Because, I mean, only recently I had cause to hear, excuse me, just how much magistrates in Lagos, which you just mentioned, earn.
Yes.
And I was scandalized.
Yes. And if you hear what the judges hear, you'll be more scandalized. So
if you're saying employ more,
yes,
can they pay them?
So that brings me to point number 2, which should be Lateef Fagbemi's agenda, salary of judicial officers. Now, I am a judge, for example. I have the power in my pen to say sentence to death, sentence to life imprisonment. I have the power to commute. Instead of life sentence or death, I make it 2 years within the framework of the law. I have the power to say pay damages of 2 billion. I have the power to make it 2 million. Give me 500,000 a month. And then people who are in trouble, who know the power I wield, find a way to reach me. To my wife, to relation, to my father. They find a way to reach me. To my son, they get to know my son is in XY university. And my son tells me he got a gift like that. Even directly. Because I'm not sure that a judge can send his child to a private university in Nigeria. Unless you happen to have, which private universities are the equivalent of state universities I attended. There's been a decline in the state universities. Unless you are fortunate to have a wife or a husband who earns humongously. I know federal judges, I don't know if it's been increased, but recently I spoke to somebody who was very close to me, who became a judge 13 years ago. His pay hasn't been moved in 13 years. He's a federal judge in 13 years.
Essentially, in 13 years. Saying that we are the ones that are creating the environment for judges to be corrupt. Is that what you're saying?
That is true. In fact, some have said cynically that the underpayment of judges is deliberate to make them weak. No judge, no high court judge will earn less than 10 million naira a month, 120 million naira a year. And Maokwe asks, can we afford it? Yes, we can afford it. Look at what they take at the National Assembly. Look at the retinue of aides. Some governors have 700 aides. I'm not exaggerating.
700?
In the last dispensation, I know states where there were 700 aides, earning like 200,000 a month and so on. A job for the boys. We can afford it. Nigeria can afford it. Justice is so important. The rule of law is the fulcrum of civilized society. You must invest in it.
Now, so when you heard the president say he's going to have a comprehensive justice reform, I'm assuming these 2 points that you have made are on the list. What other things do you think are crucial for that justice reform to represent the true rule of law that we want?
Quality in appointment. Enough of appointments is on man to man. Enough of appointments of wives of political functionaries. Enough of that kind of appointment. If the wife is qualified, is good, fine. But we know of too many cases. I have been on the Shari appointment committee in my local branch of the Bar Association for several years now, and we keep recommending names, and they are accepted in breach. We know fine lawyers, fine, hardworking boys and girls who are smart and who can deliver. And then we recommend. They don't give you a list of 3 people, 5 people, and one is the wife of commissioner of this person. The other one is the wife of local government chairman. And however good they are, we didn't recommend them. So if you take my advice and give and appoint 1,000 judges in Lagos and 500 in Anambra and 500 in Kano, and you appoint people who cannot do the job, it's a waste of time.
There was this suggestion made, I don't remember the fellow and the coinage, was some kind of interim judges of sorts, like someone of your esteem, for instance, would be assigned to certain cases, get the job done, and you are not a permanent judge, you just, I don't know what they call it. Is that something that could be advised?
Yes, in fact, it existed in colonial times and in the First Republic, where senior lawyers could handle a category of cases. You're not a judge, but then you sit in a capacity. In the UK, it still happens, and it's okay. That's out of the box thinking. At my level, you ask me to handle cases of less than 3 years imprisonment and what have you. How will I take a bribe? My level. By the way, I am 61 today.
Congratulations to you.
So when I say at my level, I've been practicing law for 38 years.
Fantastic.
So if you give me such a responsibility,
let's take a break on that note then, but we'll be back and continue our conversation with Mr. Ikeazor. Don't go away. Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Well, trying to set some agenda for Mr. Lateef Fagbemi, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Attorney General and Minister of Justice for the country. Mr. Ikeazor, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, who happens to be his colleague, also trying to see what can be done to ensure that we have improved services.
Indeed. And we noticed that the Attorney General, shortly after he took office, the first thing, even when he was being screened, one of the things he talked about was the rule of law. I mean, even at the conference where he addressed his fellow lawyers, he spoke to the rule of law. For you as a lawyer, what will constitute upholding the rule of law? I know you've talked about how, judges need to be paid, we need to do something about the state of our courts, etc. But precisely when we're talking about the rule of law, upholding the rule of law, what would that mean for you?
Yes, it's quite a mix of many things. First of all, the state has got to obey judgments of courts. Failure to obey court orders has weakened the justice delivery institution. The judge says, release this detainee, and government observes it in breach. It's so bad. We are becoming a jungle. The man on the street will not obey court orders because government does not obey. Government does not see the nexus between its disobedience and law and order in the society. So that's the first thing about the rule of law. Because what does rule of law mean? As the name says, rule of law. The law rules. Man does not rule. The whims and caprices of man do not rule. What rules is the law. And if you don't think the law is good enough, amend it. But for as long as this is the law, follow the law. So that is the first thing. Government must take the risk and obey the the orders of court. Look at President Jonathan. For the first time in Nigeria, there was obedience to court orders. For the first time, and government was not diminished.
First time?
To the best of my knowledge. To the best of my knowledge, the government of Obasanjo, who I admire greatly, I admire him greatly, his capacity to manage the country was fantastic. But one thing that stood out, he disobeyed.
What about government of Yaradua?
Well, he was there for too short a time. I will, whatever I credit to Jonathan, I credit to him, because I think it was a continuum, and he was a fine man. So that is the first thing that must be fixed. But the rule of law is an architecture. For us to have a reform in the rule of law sector, certain things must be put in place. First of all, I've already mentioned appointment of high quality individuals. Secondly, there's need for the courts to go digital. In 2023, a judge is writing longhand. The witness is speaking and he's writing longhand. And he's saying, hold on. And the witness has to pick it bit by bit. A judge is supposed to be studying the demeanor of the witness. When the witness is being untruthful, perhaps maybe he blinks a bit more, or something happens. He doesn't do that, he's writing. Why don't we record? Why don't we?
I was actually surprised because
digitalize the court.
First time I got to the court in 1993, thereabout, Justice Okpayagbe's court in High Court 3 in Lagos. I was shocked. He was writing. He said, hey, hold on. I thought, I had to I was, at that time, and how much more?
You said 1993.
Yeah, 30 years now.
I went to court very recently. I mean, even though I hope I'm never invited again. But I was in court, and that's what I also noticed in the High Court here in Abuja.
Yes.
Which looked rather modern. They had, seats were comfortable. There was air conditioning, etc. But I noticed that the judge was writing longhand.
Longhand. That is the major undoing of that job. And the job of a judex in Nigeria is one of the most oppressive jobs. Think of writing for 5 hours every day, 5 days a week.
Doesn't that also speak to capacity or a lack of it? Because it was this morning that we saw one front page of one of these dailies that's 85% of Nigerian graduates do not have digital skills. Typewriting is a lot of work, for some. So I'm wondering, doesn't that also speak to capacity to be able to do those things that you're talking about? Use those facilities, even if in place.
Well, the facilities are not in place in the first place. So yes, we have a capacity problem, but let's have the facility in place. Nature abhors a vacuum. So if you put the facilities in place, people will learn. But we do need to have facilities. A senior lawyer went to court in Florida and just followed his friend, a lawyer from Nigeria. And that day was the day they were going to read the judgment between Al Gore and George W. Bush, the judgment in the case. And he sat in the court waiting for the judges to come out and begin to read judgment for 3 hours. And then the clerk of court stood up and said, gentlemen, the judgment is ready. Go to www.this.that and download the judgment. And everybody brought out their flash and put right in the court into the place provided for it. And they had the judgment. Today in Nigeria, our judges still have to read judgments for 2-3 hours. The job is oppressive. So if we're talking of rule of law, we must go to the basics, the fundamentals, and solve them. We need to digitalize, and Nigeria is rich enough. I refuse to accept that this country is poor. In spite of what has happened, there's still enough money. There's still plenty of waste. Let's invest in the judiciary. Excuse me. Even the economy is affected by a poor judiciary, by a poorly run judiciary. A couple of years ago.
I noticed, just before you give that anecdote, I noticed that the NBA included the economy in their discussion. Yesterday, the economy was priority, and I was wondering, okay, lawyers are interested in the economy as well. I mean, is that also affecting the rule of law?
Yes, there's a link between the rule of law and the economy. I'll just give you a simple example. A German firm wanted to invest in Nigeria. And this is just one isolated case. It happens all the time. And they did their due diligence, consulted lawyers, consulted the NBA. I was vice president of the NBA at the time. And they wanted our input. And they asked a very simple question. How long do we need to get justice in the court of first instance? How long does your case last? And we said, okay, about 5 years on the average.
Whoa.
Courts of appeal, if somebody appeals, how long will that take? And we said just between 2 and 3 years, which is not true. You know, it's not true. Supreme Court, we say maybe about 5 years. We can't invest in this country.
It's too long.
Yes. Now, that's the economy. And we understand they went to Ghana. I don't know whether Ghana is better, but we understand they went to Ghana.
But isn't
because
that why
they are
we have
realistic.
arbitration? I mean,
well, not every case is arbitrable. And even where they are, you still can appeal. If you're not satisfied with the judgment, the decision of the arbitrators, you go to the Court of Appeal. It ends up at the Court of Appeal. And now, how many justices do the Court of Appeal Act says 100 judges. The Court of Appeal, 100 judges. And right now, they're probably about 72. Retirements, that is something, forgive my language, something irresponsible about the last federal administration was that judges retire and they don't get replaced. Unguta died 3 years ago. He's not been replaced. Judges die, they retire, they're not replaced. Right now, there's 11 vacancies or thereabouts in the Supreme Court. So, when you appoint 11 at a swoop, they don't even get the opportunity to understudy those who have been there. Because before they know, they're already doing the job, the main job. But if, when one person goes, you put in another immediately, then what's going to happen? That person now understudies the people who have been there. But you appointed, last time they appointed was 8 at a swoop. 8, and of the 8 appointed, one has died. One has died. About 2 have retired. One is retiring on Sunday, another is retiring in December. No appointments.
You know, while all of this makes a world of sense, it's only natural to consider, is there a role for states in this? Is there an intermediary role for states in it so that some cases don't have to go as far as you said the other time as maybe the appeal court or the Supreme Court at the federal level? Do we also have the same situation or, stagnation, I can use the word, at the states level?
Yes, it's my view that we need at this stage, well, in the First Republic, which we need to return to, in a sense, we need to return to the principles of the First Republic. The regions had Western Region Court of Appeal. The regions had their Court of Appeal. Now, states don't have their Courts of Appeal. States have to appeal to what ideally is the Federal Court of Appeal. Now, why won't states, we can even make it zonal, the geopolitical zones. Why won't states have Courts of Appeal? Why won't we even have Supreme Court at that zonal level? The 6 zones have their Supreme Court. They have a Federal Supreme Court. Then certain matters, for example, land matters. The land, the culture around land in the in the southeast, for instance, is vastly different from the culture in the far north. But then you may now bring as presiding justice of the Court of Appeal, Enugu, Owerri, Awka divisions.
If we have Supreme Courts in zones, are governorship elections supposed to go there, given the influence that these governors who have funds, the pockets wield?
No, the Constitution will spell out what should be the jurisdiction of each of the courts. I'm looking ideally at things like land issues and what have you. Constitutional electoral issues should go to the federal level. But land, for example, why should land matters get to the Supreme Court? Why? Now, the culture in Nnewi concerning land is vastly different from the culture in Ibadan concerning land. And then perhaps whoever sits in the Supreme Court or in the Court of Appeal, none of them is originally from Nnewi or Ibadan or what have you. So we need to really break down this thing. Let's have more courts at that level, and let's have jurisdictions. The state jurisdiction should be different from the federal jurisdiction.
If he were to implement this, how long does it take?
To implement this?
Supreme Court in zones.
How long will it take to implement it?
To get all of those up and running?
The day the National Assembly agrees to pass the bill, that day it becomes law. If the National Assembly does it in 1 month, it's law.
Because where I was going, I mean, something that Chamberlain said is actually very, very correct, and you can confirm that one way or the other, and that is the fact that governors at the state level at this moment have tremendous influence. And so if a chief judge or the judiciary in the state, for instance, are trying to do the right thing, if I can say it that way, the governors may have said to have some significant way of influencing them, conversely. In an ideal situation, can we insulate the judiciary, either at the local government level, the federal level, or the state level? Can we insulate it? Is there a way to insulate the judiciary from the influences of the executive as we currently have it? Because from what you were saying earlier, I mean, what happens in other climes, it doesn't happen that way. So is there a way to insulate the judiciary from the whims and caprices of any executive or even the legislature?
Yes, there is a way, and we have made there's quite some mileage on that. Because the position has been, the Constitution has always said that all monies which belong to the judiciary should be handed over to the head of court. But the state's chief executives have always observed that in breach. I believe that President Buhari signed some executive order, or there's a constitutional amendment. Quite frankly, I'm not sure, but there's something that has happened that makes it imperative for these things to be handed over to the heads of court. He who pays the piper dictates the tune, and because the chief judges had to go to the governors for stationery, for electricity generating sets and the like, the governors seem to have them by the balls, if you permit my language. So what we need further at this stage is to insulate the judiciary by removing from the governor the sole right of being determinant of chief judge. I mean, who the chief judge should be, for instance. As it is now, a judge could, and it happened even a few months ago in one of the states, will skip his number one judge. As happened in the state in which I practice, the most senior judge was skipped for the second, and the governor told anybody who would listen that, well, this one is not friendly, this one. So that is a problem in itself. But the Constitution can be tweaked in such a way that it becomes compulsory, whoever is the most senior.
How about the financial autonomy? Sorry.
Yes, financial autonomy is where I went to initially, that the governors have observed it in breach.
But I asked about financial autonomy because you said earlier that the pay is ridiculous, and Maupe also confirmed, reminded us of the case about, magistrates, even customary courts. If the pay is that ridiculous, it only speaks to how easily compromisable they are, doesn't it?
Well, this is an area that interests me because I know that the budget for the federal judiciary, Buhari's last budget was 150 billion naira for the federal judiciary, the judiciary, and to the extent that the federal judiciary, the federal government also assists the states. And I know that since Tinubu became president, he approved another 35 billion. But I know that there's been 185 billion naira approved. So the question is, 185 billion naira should really go a long way as far as pay is concerned. But it does appear as if these monies are also utilized for capital projects. Like I know there's quite a number of courts being built in Ikeazor. There's a new federal high court complex, multi-storied, being built and what have you. But I don't have the facts, to be frank with you. But I believe that what is even being budgeted now should be able to change the coloration of salaries. And I said earlier, and I wasn't saying it lightly, I wasn't being frivolous, no high court judge should earn less than 10 million naira a month, even based on this 185 billion naira that was released, based on the current number of the judges. So I don't know what is going on there, that in spite of such humongous amounts being released, the judges are still, in the view of the bar, underpaid.
But that is changing
10 million
now.
naira a month.
Yeah, but I thought that changed. That's part of what the...
That's what he's proposing.
Yes, but there was a directive to that effect. I think revenue mobilization are looking into that. I remember when I asked...
Yes, indeed. They say they're looking into that, yeah, because I think we're also looking at...
The court ruled on that.
For governors and a number of other people.
Went to court on that matter. You remember the case?
Yes, I know that case.
About 10 million there.
Yes. Now, look, they should stop looking into it together with the executive. They should isolate the judiciary.
So that's where that was the only case we could make. I mean, when there was an outcry over the review of emolument which the RAMFAC was undertaking, we had to remind people that it also included the emoluments and salaries of judicial officers. Which for some people, it was now a bit awkward. Would you then say that you shouldn't also look at that of judicial officers who might have no other source of income and who are not exactly your regular public officials?
And remember, when a judge retires, he cannot practice anymore. When you retire, that is it. You can't go back to the courts to practice. If it will help RAMFAC, let me say this. In the UK, the Chief Justice of the UK earns more than the Prime Minister. There's hardly any of the first world nations where the Chief Justice doesn't earn higher than the other arms of government because they know what this is about. Now, I gave a scenario earlier on. You have a situation where somebody has the power of life and death. Somebody has the power to commute or to remit. Somebody can say, pay all these damages of 20 billion naira. Or he can reduce 20 billion naira claimed, 200 million. There's a lot of power in the pen of the person. Pay the person so attractively that the person will not be distracted at all. Pay the person an elitist pay that removes the person from the demands, the grind of daily living. We are a society with an extended family structure.
Very true.
And everybody calls you my lord, my lord, my lord. And the man in the village believes that you are called my lord because you are really a lord and you have a fat bank account. You can't even solve your problems.
If I could just read this out,
yes.
Maybe RMAFC will have to explain where they are on this matter.
Yes.
In that particular judgment, which was delivered by Justice Obaseki Osahe, he ordered the government to pay a monthly salary of 10 million naira to Chief Justice of Nigeria, 9 million to other justices of the Apex Court, President of the Court of Appeal, 9 million, while other justices of the Appellate Court, 8 million, Chief Judges of both Federal and State High Courts, 8 million, while judges of the Federal, State High Courts, 7 million. Is this what the Attorney General can actually ensure that this happens?
That judgment was last year, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, before fuel subsidy.
2022.
Well, 2022.
July 2022.
Yes, before the economy went the way it has gone. And I just...
So there should be any more than this?
The Chief Justice, in my view, will not earn anything less than 20 million naira, twice that amount. 240 million naira a year. Place the Chief Justice in such a position. Place the judges of the Supreme Court of Appeal. How many are they? High Court. We've been talking about the Superior Court of Justice. Remember the magistrates. Okay. The magistrates are the grassroots courts. They're the ones who handle, this person stole yam, this person stole some corn, this person stole phone, or recharge card.
Right,
they need to be paid also reasonably. And this is what the new Attorney General should make a priority. Something must be, isolate the judiciary, pay them well in such a way that there will be no further temptation except to one who is perhaps, what's that word now, amoral, only an amoral individual.
Okay. Just one more thing, there's an inquiry. Someone's trying to find out, look, is it that they're wondering how judges usually grant orders to stop the police, the DSS, the EFCC, ICPs from investigating certain persons, perhaps usually certain big personalities in the country?
I think that that is a bit of an exaggeration. Those orders are often interim orders. Those orders are perhaps to last a maximum of 14 days. They are not made in perpetuity. And if made in perpetuity, that would be very bad.
All right, Mr. Ikeazor, Senior Advocate of Nigeria and former of NBA's first Vice President. Thank you for coming on today. Good to see you again, and happy birthday above all else.
Thank you. Nice to be here.